as well as your handbags. We don't want to have any incidences here. I know that we're all very, very responsible individuals, but you never can tell. Well, one or two person might just be tempted, and we don't want them to fall into that temptation. So please be mindful of all of your personal items. We're going to be starting off with first some remarks from an erudite scholar, a prof. Thank you. Let me I have to call you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as a way to kick off this after coffee break session, before I call on my other speakers, please I would like to invite Professor Godfrey Tangwa, all the way from Cameroon. Is a fellow of the Cameroonian Academy of Science, as well as fellow of other academic institute, as the case is, a bioethicist from the University of Yaoundé under the Cameroon Biotics Initiative campaign in Cameroon. He came all the way from there, and we, as a way of honor to him and as well as Cameroon, we'll be inviting him to come speak for the next 3 to 5 minutes. Please, can you put your hands together for Prof. Tangwa? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the GATE Consortium for inviting me to this meeting. In fact, I am a very enthusiastic member of the GATE Consortium, and I've missed only about 3 of the conferences that it has organized. This particular conference had for a theme the possible benefits and the possible risks of synthetic biology. And my understanding of this theme is that it is part and parcel. It is a consequence of the European Industrial Revolution. And we all know that the European Industrial Revolution of the 18th and 19th centuries led to the enslavement of Africans, to the colonization of the African continent, to its balkanization by the European colonizers. So we must understand the theme of this conference in that light, because that's how we come in. We should know how and why we are concerned. So the Industrial Revolution, which I like to qualify always with European Industrial Revolution, it found a breakthrough in molecular biology. And molecular biology led to a lot of discoveries. Then there was DNA. Then there was the Human Genome Project, which got completed. And you will remember that there was a summit called the Rio Summit. By this time, it had been realized that science had a very great potential, but that there were also dangers involved. That is why at the Rio Summit, the principle of precaution was established, the precautionary principle, that science should move ahead, but cautiously. And when we are not sure, we should leave it. But the development of molecular biology led to throwing this precautionary principle out of the window. And that is one of the things that has led to synthetic biology. We've had research on stem cells. We've had research on the genes. And from the European side, you know that they are talking largely about transhumanism. They want to transcend humanity, and human beings. And that is where it becomes a little scary. It is true that synthetic biology, in conjunction with artificial intelligence, may lead to curing the process of aging, which is being seen as a disease. Aging is being seen as a disease. But if human beings can cure the process of aging, then maybe there's the possibility of living forever. In fact, I first heard this idea about the year 2004 at the World Congress of Bioethics in the Netherlands. And then they were talking about extending human longevity to about 250 years. And I mean, some of us were incredulous, say, what for? You want to live for 250 years to be doing what? But it seems that now is a reality. So we must be conscious of that. We may stop aging, but within our own context here, we will still be dying young from cholera and tuberculosis, which are primary healthcare diseases. They are connected with sanitation, with hygiene, and with primary healthcare. So when we start talking about the marvels that we can do with synthetic biology, we should keep in mind that our environment, whether it's Lagos, whether it's Oyo State, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's other parts of Africa, really need to tackle, they need to tackle primary health care, because our environment is too dirty, and we have to come to terms with that. And where we have to be doing high-tech research, we should be able to justify it. Why should we be doing it? We came into this as slaves and as colonized people. Where and when did we make the breakthrough to be talking also like people who are making research, high-tech research, which could lead to a lot of things? So we should remember that primarily we are not agents of this process. We are patients. We are those who have been acted upon. And if we want to act now, we would say that it is a breakthrough. Now, there was this issue of genetically modified organisms. And there have been genetically modified mosquitoes. I think it was in 2016. Genetically modified mosquitoes were released in Burkina Faso. And all sorts of speculations were flying around. One of the speculations was that these mosquitoes had been treated in such a way that they would sterilize people that they bite. Okay, those who are doing other research would quickly say this is a conspiracy theory. But I've been paying attention to conspiracy theories as well. We need to pay attention to conspiracy theories. especially if we are not the ones developing them. If it is part of those who are developing non-conspiracy theories, who tell you that something is the case, at least common sense would direct you to look at it closely and carefully. So that is about what I wanted to say. And what I want to say is that we've been touching on many important issues, but scratching them on the surface. We need to be able to look at them carefully and in depth. It is very good to learn that Lagos State has a high-tech laboratory, okay, for genes. And one would want to know what are the consequences of that for Nigeria and for the rest of Africa. Will we still be shipping our samples out to the Western world, to Europe and America? Because from the year 2000, Europe and America have been hunting for African genes. And we need to ask that, why was this? But now, in fact, we know that even if they don't have the samples, if they have the data from the samples, they can derive more from it than the data itself. It depends how they would analyze it. And with artificial intelligence, they say the sky is the limit. So, yeah, we are beginning to play God. I say we are joining ourselves with the push from the Western world. And we need to be cautious, because what that could lead to is to a precipice where human life could just be eliminated from the world. And then we will really have a trans-human universe, you know, a universe without human beings. Thank you very much.
Please, can we put our hands together for Prof. When Prof was making that presentation or remark, as you might call it, some of my madams at the side were wondering, 250 years. Who wants to live for 250 years? Yeah, raise your hands up. So you people don't like life? If you want to live for 200 years, raise your hand up. Do you realize that there was a time people were dying at 600 years? This is serious. Yeah, I was like thinking that many people were going to raise their hands up with me. So, okay, if you want to live for 150 years, let me see your hands. You people don't like life. Thank you, my sister. Please put your hands together for her. No, because what you don't seem to realize is that when they were dying at 500, 600 years, they were not finishing secondary school at the age of 18. They were starting, as a matter of fact, they were still in kindergarten at 20 years. So imagine by the time you are 100 years, you would have not even started safe, as a matter of fact. This is serious. So people don't want to, well, may God help us all. The fact that AI has come on the board, we're wondering how far humans are going to be able to contend with artificial intelligence. However, 70 years, 120 perhaps is fair enough. I guess life is a continuum, and so we have to create our own in terms of legacy for the coming generation. Africa is a youth-centric demography as it is, and I'm glad that the people that are here are obviously a reflection of the fact that they are showing concern for the coming generation behind us. And perhaps next year, the organizers should also reach out to the schools so that we can have a session for the youth. I'm glad that we had this coming up. Please put your hands together for them. Because I know when I was in secondary school or university, I remember some of those impressions are on my mind when we were taken out for excursions. People get exposed to some of these things in their teenage age, and it stays with them. So we need to have the students themselves to be part of the 10th edition of this conference. I will mention that to the COO so that they understand the challenges they are going to be facing. All right? And I think earlier on, Professor Abayomi had made a presentation that in another many years, the world's population will be some billions. You and I would have gone a long time ago, you know. So sometimes when he was saying that in my mind, I was saying, okay, that is not my problem, you know. But it's also part of it, because whatever foundation you lay right now is what those younger people coming behind us will definitely carry on. So ladies and gentlemen, to quickly move on to our next item, we are going to adjust the program in a little while, have some speakers before we go for lunch, and then we come back for the final session, and then we call it a day at the 9th African Conference on One Health and Biosecurity. Right now, my next speaker is an individual who is the DG, the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of the National Biosafety Management Agency. She is the former DG of Firo Oshodi, Lagos, and an indigene of Lagos State. She holds a doctorate certificate in food and industrial microbiology from the Premier University, the University of Ibadan, and the master's qualifications from the University of Benin. She began her profession in the Federal Institute of Industrial Research, Oshodi, where she rose through the ranks, and today she is the DG, giving the leadership that is needed. To speak for the next few minutes, to speak for the next session, pardon me, can we put our hands together for Dr. Agnes Yemisi Asabra as she comes up to make a presentation. Technical guys, please, can we make sure that our slides are up? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I stand here representing the National Biosafety Management Agency, a regulatory body that is poised to put in measures in place to ensure biosecurity and biosafety. And the title of my presentation is The Importance of Building Organizational Synergy in Addressing Emerging Biosecurity Threats in Nigeria. As a preamble, due to globalization, this has raised the risk of emerging biosecurity threats. And this is because people are moving back and forth. And very clear in our minds is the case of Mr. Johnson in the case of Ebola, where we lost our dear Dr. Adadevo. So it is the total, is usually when you're talking about the synergy and what is happening, it is actually what we do to prevent loss, theft, misuse. Misuse is very key because a lot of things are being used, but I'll talk more about that later. Diversion or intentional release of pathogens, and that's where the biosecurity aspect comes in. So this presentation hopes to highlight the importance of building organizational synergy in Nigeria for effective risk identification and to mitigate the impact of emerging biosecurity threats. So what is in the Nigeria biosecurity space? We're talking about infectious disease, we're talking about bioterrorism, and we're talking about accidental release of pathogens. Like I said earlier, you could just look at the fact that biosecurity is actually making sure that these pathogens, these toxins are contained and not getting into the wrong hands for use as, it could be for bioterrorism. We're still so familiar with COVID. Who released it? Where is it coming from? People say it's from China, wherever. But then these are some of the aspects. So what is it that all this accumulates to harm to human health. It accumulates to harm to animal health. It can upset the ecosystem when we're talking about biodiversity. And then it can disrupt the economy. We all know very well what happened in the case of COVID. Then intense demand on social and political structures. So it is, actually, we use it to mitigate challenges. So, just to bring you to get the understanding of what actually is NBMA's role in this. In 2015, there was an act that brought about NBMA, talking about biosafety. But by 2021, by 2019, let me go this way. By 2019, the act was amended to involve biosecurity, to involve gene editing, to involve synthetic biology. And because of this amendment to the act, in 2021, the Executive Council now approved a national biosecurity policy. And this policy helps to sort of harness all those agencies that are involved in biosecurity issues. And this policy aims to ensure synergy, harmonization among security stakeholders for effective and efficient operations of the national biosecurity system in Nigeria. And it is to ensure that all aspects of national and international agreement conventions, there are kinds of conventions that are put in place so that there is a standard which is followed. For instance, in case of the biosecurity, we have the Cartagena protocols. We have for the biodiversity, we have the Convention on Biodiversity. So for the one of the biosecurity, we have the National Biosecurity Policy and Action Plan 2022 to 2026. And these are the major chapters that are involved in this policy. And at the end of the presentation, I'll give you our website where you can go into it and you can get this biosecurity policy and action plan. So the one which chapter 4, it talks about the strategy and action plan, and it has 24 thematic areas for implementation. And also the chapter 5, it helps us to monitor all those stakeholders that are involved in this biosecurity action. And some of these include MDAs, they include the general public and research and academia. And we work extensively with the Office of the National Security Advisor, that's the ONSA. We work with the National Customs Service, and we work with Federal Ministry of Health, Federal Ministry of Agri and Rural Development. And also, part of our collaboration with the customs is that we are able to track when genetically modified foods or feeds come into the country, so that we are alerted. There's a software where we are able to do this, and this is helping and will continue to help the nation so that the citizens of this country are not ingesting things that are unsafe for them, like GMOs, that probably the level that it should be labeled, or also that when these things come in, we're able to stop them even before they actually get into the country. So what are the potential biosecurity threats in Nigeria. We've heard some, but one key one I would like to talk about is the climate change. And we know the floods. We know what happened last year in some of these states of the country. And after the flood, the impending diseases that was an offshoot of these floods. And also infectious diseases, and then vector-borne, and then globalization and industrialization has influenced on the pandemics due to open doors and increased international trade. And that is why we're very happy in NBMA that we have this collaboration with the Nigeria Customs Service, because hitherto so many unsavory products come into the country and you now have problems. But now with that, we're able to know those countries that are involved in genetically modified products, so that we are able to, beforehand, be able to analyze and to be able to be sure that these products are safe as they come into the country. Population spread, that was said earlier in the day, shifting demographics, changing land use practices. You know, with all the risk of these animal to human diseases, that's the zoonosis, you know, affecting the human beings. Another thing of importance is the rapid advancement in life science, dual use research. This is very key. There's this bacterium, Coronium Clostridium botulinum. We know that it affects canned foods, but then it is used in the cosmetic world to make sure that the woman looks beautiful. So that's dual use. And that means we have to be actually careful. These are potential biosecurity threats. Transportation and delivery, I need not talk more about it. And I like to commend my state, the transportation of meat with the freezer buses. Unlike before, we all know they are carrying the meat, blood is spilling all over, but that does not happen any longer. Bioterrorism. This is a deliberate release of harmful biological threats. We hear a lot of countries threatening. We know what's happening in North Korea. We see what North Korea is doing. We see what Russia is doing. So many things threatening, trying to do this and that. These are some of these, because you cannot, for microorganisms, there's really no barricade, like I'm here now, this is stopping me from going over there. But in the case of microorganisms, they can move around, and this is a great threat. So we cannot say, okay, COVID happened in China, in America, it came to Nigeria too because of movement of people and materials. And also antimicrobial resistance, that is very terrible in this part of our world. People, they just say, oh, I have a running tummy. Oh, go and just take these antibiotics. And by the time you keep taking this biotic, your body now begins to form a resistance to it, and it is not effective any longer. And you now have to look for another antibiotics, probably a stronger one, which poses risk of diseases. We heard a little about that earlier in the day. People bring in all kinds of animals. In the process, there's kind of mutation, there's pass of genes and all manner of things. And also when you're talking of implanting, you talk of something called the gene flow. You have a genetically modified plant, and then around it, you have a normal growing area. But if that genetically modified plant has not gone through environmental assessment, there is a likelihood that it could affect the next field, which might be injurious to that, to the plant, and definitely the human. Is that we have. So what is the role of the organization and strategy in biosecurity? This involves the collaboration and coordination of multi-sectoral and multidisciplinary efforts among all stakeholders to achieve the common goal. We have stakeholders which include MDAs, we have research institutes, we also have some of these organizations, like when I mentioned the Office of the Security, of the National Security Advisor, the Nigerian Customs, to mention a few, and Agric and Health. So we envisage a system that ensures that expertise, resources, and information are shared seamlessly, resulting in a robust and agile response to emerging threats. It is not something that you just are stationary, and that was why Lagos, when the time of COVID, they were very proactive. They were thinking of, okay, this has to be done, this has to be done. So it has to be agile, it has to be mobile. It is not something that you just sit down, because things are always emerging. Pathogens are emerging day in, day out. And what are the benefits? The benefits, we have some benefits also. It helps in information sharing and surveillance, and then early detection and rapid response. And that is very key when you're talking about organization strategy in biosecurity. So cross-sector collaboration is something I've spoken so much about. Biosecurity threats often span multiple sectors, and a synergistic approach encourages collaboration across these sectors to address the complex and interconnected nature of biological risk. You know, biological risks are quite complex, and apart from being complex, it comes on fast. If I give you when you're talking about hazards, when you're talking about risk, you have the physical hazards, you have the biological hazards, you have the chemical hazards. The effect of chemical hazards takes a longer time to manifest, but that of biological, it manifests faster, and that is why you have to make sure that you address it immediately before it escalates. And that is why every hand must be on deck when you are talking about biological risk. And because there's this network, so that is why it becomes a benefit in having an organizational synergy. The doctor knows what he has to do, the nurse, the lab technician, everybody has to do what he or she has to do as at when due. Then policy development. That is our National Biosafety Policy and Action Plan. It was developed in collaboration with over 70 MDAs. So that means that we have quite a robust policy that is able to mitigate against any biosecurity threat in the country. We are still working more on it. We haven't finished yet. We are still on the implementation. We are still having consultations. We are still having a lot of meetings to make sure this is done. And then it brings about capacity building. There's international cooperation. We're always having that. We're always discussing, having to discuss our policies, having to discuss what we need to do, and this has helped. And then the effective communication and public awareness. I would like to give it to GET. They have been there 9 years, and their impact is being felt. Whenever you are talking about biosecurity, their name never goes unmentioned. And these are the kind of public awareness, these are the kind of things that make everybody to know about what biosecurity is about. And like the testimonies that were shared, that some people said, oh, they even never knew about these things until they came. This is part of what the benefits of having organizational synergy. And then you go without saying research and innovation, and then it's sustainable and adaptable, and then it's a continuous review and education. It is not static, it is mobile. What are the challenges that we find in building organizational synergy in biosecurity? Lack of dedicated funding, communication barriers. There's a lot that, because the world of pathogens, microorganisms, is diverse, the way the Corynum bacterium would react is different from the way Salmonella is different from the way Ebola, you know. So all these things, you need to be able to explain and let people know what actually it is all about. And then training gaps. There's still a lot to learn. And I give it to the Lagos State government with the biolab that level 4 that they're about building. That is, it's mind-blowing, because and it will be the first in Africa. So we know that we're not really there yet. And one thing I would say is that in relation to what the person who spoke before me, you know, we have some collaborations and things like that. When you tell them, okay, how about getting us a lab? They would never want to do lab. But if it's training, or if it's capacity building, doing all that, but then the key thing, we need labs, need to be able to say, okay, whatever it is you bring to us, can we check it out? Can we know this? But we do a lot of risk assessments. The dossier, everything is brought, but then to now go to the nitty-gritty, it becomes a difficult thing. So those are some of the challenges that we have in this. And then resistance to change. People just like to do things the way they're doing it and are resistant to change. And then the public awareness, it's a challenge. And in our own field of work, we need to do a lot of awareness. And this becomes a bit difficult due to funding and things like that. And we encounter the anti-GM. They could be very, very strong. very virulent. And that was what, there was someone who spoke about that, well, it's good. You can challenge, you can see whatever it is the technology is, but then you still need to be able to know the nitty-gritty of it. And that is why in NBMA, we regulate genetically modified organisms, we regulate those who carry out modern biotechnology. And when we go out there and we say, okay, for instance, the PBR cowpea, that is, it's a technology that has helped in the growing of cowpea, that's our normal beans, and they have been able to use genetic modifications, and this cowpea is able to grow without being infested on the field. And as a regulator, we need to be sure, we need to know, and to be able to ascertain that yes, this technology is safe. But when you now say that, it's like you are advocating, but if you are going to regulate, you must know what you are regulating and say that, okay, yes, it is safe. But if you do not know and you do not find out and say yes for a sure thing, it is good, then we would be lacking in our work. So we as regulators, we see what the technology is about, and we can say, yes, this technology is safe for our people. So some of these case studies are, we've had a few efforts in building organization synergy among them, and we have these, our policy, our action plan, our strategy plan, our multi-sectional plans. These are what would help us in what we do. So what are our recommendations? Synergized efforts between organizations involved in public health, agriculture, security, and research are required to address the complex nature of these threats effectively. In the One Health approach, which involves agriculture, environment, human health, for the prevention, early detection, rapid response to biothreats, and recovery from the biosecurity incident. So One Health, being a collaborative, multisectoral, and transdisciplinary approach, can help to address the full spectrum of disease control. From prevention to detection, approach can be implemented across all levels of the community, subnational, national, so on. So in concluding, building organization strategy is critical for a robust, coordinated, and effective response to emerging biosecurity threats in Nigeria. It will simultaneously boost the capacity of individual organizations by fostering collaboration, information sharing, and resource optimization. And with established clear objectives, collaborative culture, and leadership commitment, this is very key. In any organization, in any form of structure, in any form of organization, if there is no leadership commitment, if there's no management commitment, it becomes difficult for it to happen. For all that we need to do in One Health, if there's no leadership commitment, it would not work. So there should be regular assessment and review of processes and practices. And the National Biosecurity Policy and Action Plan was 2022 to 2026, was developed to address coordination and collaboration and to set overall direction on managing biosecurity activities in Nigeria. So you can get us on this, our website, www.mbma.gov.ng, and our email, phone, and our social media handles. Thank you. The National Bios, I would like to end that National Biosafety Management Agency is well positioned to ensure safety in the use of modern biotechnology by providing a holistic approach in its regulation. And MBMA, you can see this rock. Oh. I think we can see the rock. Can we see the rock? So you can see that rock. So MBMA is a formidable agency in a controversial sector. Why do I say that? Because of some people would say, oh, GM things are not safe, but then we are able to ascertain and to say when it is safe and when it is not safe. So we want you to have confidence that whenever we say this product is safe or this technology is safe, be well rested and be well assured. Thank you very much.
Madam DG, you're not the only one that can boast about Rocco. There's rock in Oluma Rock. That one we have known for a long time. This Abuja Rock, you know, you see, the way I'm talking, you see I can speak like 10,000 syllables in one word, but you are taking your time. Even to step up here and tell you, madam, time is over, I couldn't even do it. So I could imagine that has to do with the fact that, I mean, what you guys are doing out there at MBMA, and we're glad you are actually participating this year. I'm not sure if they were here last year. Yeah, they were here last year. Hopefully, next year we're going to see greater involvement from NBMA. It's very important. Like I always say to people, conferences are not just talk shops. These are where we get some of those insights. I mean, with your presentation, we get to understand how far and how well the agency is going and where it's going to help in terms of helping us be well prepared. And we need to take this thing seriously. I want to say a big thank you, Ma. We're looking forward to your partnership next year as well. I'm very sure Dr. Dotu is going to forward a sponsorship form to them. I hear that MBMA has plenty money. We want to make sure that the rock is standing till next year so that we can have a much more expressive 10th year anniversary of the African Conference on One Health and Biosecurity, Madam. Thank you so very much, Ma. Please, can we put our hands together one more time for Dr. Agnes Yemisi Asagram, the Director General CEO of National Biosafety Management Agency here in Nigeria. My next speaker, like I said earlier on, I've adjusted the program a bit. We're going to have 2 more presentations, and we will go for lunch. After lunch, we come back for the final part of the program. She is the Senior Director of Business Development at Concentric by Jinko, the Biosecurity and Public Health arm of Jinko Bioworks. Our primary role at Concentric is growing best-in-class laboratory partnership for monitoring pathogens of global and regional concern. I would like us to please turn to page 27 of the program, where we have more details of our biography so that we can get ourselves familiar with our next speaker. Please, can you put your hands together for Dr. Karen Hogan. All right, Karen, I was wondering why you went all that way.
I
Okay, it's all right.
Hello, and I wish we had that picture back up because that was not me, but that's artificial intelligence at its best, right? So I know I stand between this room, one more speaker, and lunch, and I had the chance to eat lunch here yesterday, so I know how much we're all looking forward to it. So I hope to energize everybody through the talk today and then have a chance to speak with all of you more. My name is Dr. Karen Hogan. I live in Philadelphia, so I've come a long way, and it's Thanksgiving week in the US, so I'll be heading back so that my husband and my sons are well fed. But what I'd like to do today is just leave the audience with 3 things. The first is I need your help. If I speak too fast, please just raise your hand. That's a consequence of being a city girl from the US. I'd like to leave you with 3 things today. 1, who is Concentric? Why are we here? The second is, what is our technology toolbox that we've developed in the US that we're bringing to the global community? And then the third is how governments are using that toolbox to address their local and national concerns. So it's quite a customizable way we interact with governments. So we're going to talk today about the first mile problem. I have a friend. Many times we hear about the last mile problem. That's where the technologies have been developed, the medical countermeasures are in place, but getting them to the actual citizens and communities is very difficult. We are looking at the front end of the problem, which is, why are we always responding in an emergency situation? How can we develop better surveillance, earlier signals, so that we have more time to understand what we're dealing with in terms of infectious diseases, where they're going to be impacting, and how do we direct limited resources to those communities? Okay. So Ginkgo Bioworks is headquartered in Boston. If you find yourself in Boston, we'd love to have you and tour you through our facilities. We're primarily a synthetic biology company. We've been around for many years. We actually went public on the stock market in the last 2 years. And our core kind of competency is bioinnovation. So genetic modification, working with everybody from the pharmaceutical industry to cosmetics and textile producers to agriculture. And we have a lot of experience doing this work because we work with model organisms in synthetic biology, and we do high throughput screenings to develop the best strains possible that are the safest and most effective for bioinnovation. So some examples are, we worked with Moderna to help develop the COVID vaccine. We're very proud of that. Helped work on how to manufacture it faster and better. Thank you. We work with bioremediation companies who are dealing with waste and pollution so that we can start to think through how to recycle water for drinking. We know that fresh water's a problem, and so we work in that space. We also work in agriculture. Right now, fertilizer shortages are a major issue for farming. We're working on biologically based solutions for nitrogen sequestration so that we don't have to rely on those supply chains. We have 3.8 billion gene sequences to date on our ginkgo side of the house, and ginkgo's hard to pronounce. It's based off the ginkgo biloba tree, one of the oldest trees in the world. As good stewards of genetic modification and of synthetic biology, we have a deep commitment to how that innovation plays in the real world. We don't want to be putting innovations out that are not safe. We also want to be monitoring innovations because life adapts. And so while we might intend to put something out in a particular way, environmental pressures may change how that organism performs in the real world. So this has been a big concern of the company. And when COVID came along, we said this is our chance to actually implement biosecurity. First for COVID, then for multiple diseases, and ultimately for synthetic biology innovation. Usually I'm standing in front of a Western audience that thinks that COVID is the first pandemic that has ever happened. I'm standing in front of an audience today that has dealt with outbreaks, epidemics, and pandemics before. So I don't have to emphasize the point that COVID is not the first of its kind. We have advanced epidemiological forecasting and modeling tools that actually showcase right now that we should expect in the next 25 years another pandemic the size of COVID. We're also seeing, as population grows, that could escalate faster and happen more in a 5 to 10 year frame. But the good news, and I'm a hopeful person, the good news is that this is not immutable. We can actually change that timeline. If we know more about the pathogens that are moving around the world, we can start to implement mitigation practices and develop medical countermeasures so that we never see a pandemic of that size again. We certainly are interested, in HIV's potential to hit pandemic proportions, and also highly contagious diseases. So we're really in this space. And so that's who we are. That's Concentric. We're the biosecurity arm of a synthetic biology company who's deeply committed to the mission of the work we do and who cares about the consequences of the technologies that we develop. I'm going to talk now about our technology toolbox. If you find any of this interesting, I'd be happy to talk to you about it further. I won't get into all the details here for all the non-scientists in the crowd. But what we build is our fundamental thesis is we need to revamp technology. You all were a steward of the processes that need to be in place. Having a biobank facility that was ready to go for COVID, you were able to actually see those real world tangible benefits. That's not the case for most of the world. And so we need to work with our world partners, our global partners, on how to get technology in place that can do better detection, better monitoring, and better risk mitigation. And so I'm on the technology platform. It's my team that works with scientists and laboratories across the world to help build out these technology platforms. But the ultimate goal is not to just have sequencers putting out sequence data or PCR machines putting out test results. The idea is that we want to create an aggregation system that takes all of this data, then takes all of the metadata, which is all the other data, and pulls it together to do better disease prediction and modeling. So we have an epidemiological team that's quite accomplished and is hired just to help consult governments on pandemic preparedness and healthcare preparedness. And so the way this works is we're monitoring event detection, both in databases that are reporting test results and sequences, but also looking at social media, so Twitter and Facebook, looking at media reporting, using not just English as the language that we input into our natural language modeling systems. We have over 19 languages, and we hope to grow that as we work with more communities so that we eliminate bias in these AI systems. When we feed those into our system, we're able to create an assessment and monitoring package that can be used for early warning tools and eventually for predictive analysis. So I would be lying if I said I understood how all of this works, but we work with very smart people on our team who do, and we'd be happy to introduce them to you. Where I spend most of my time is on this end-to-end system here. And I'd like to, before I dive into this, just speak to the fact that we're always working with local partners. We don't want samples coming to Boston for testing and sequencing. That makes zero sense. We work with local laboratories. We work with local universities. We sponsor iGEM that we talked about today. We recruit student high school groups and college groups to learn about synthetic biology and participate in these challenges, because our goal is to bring global technology to local centers, build local capacity. Any money that's being invested by the government should go back to the community in the form of training and in workforce development. We know that when this happens, healthcare systems, crime, low crime, good healthcare systems, and lots of biotechnology capabilities lead to megacities being world centers for future business and investment. So the way we work is we go end to end. We work with people who collect samples. We work with laboratories who extract that genetic material and read it using genomic sequencing. Right now, we're rolling out a genomic sequencing technology that provides information in one test on 66 pathogens. That includes Ebola, Lassa fever, that includes COVID, that includes vector-borne diseases. So off of one sample, we can generate all that information and feed it back to the public health officials and federal health officials. So that's the kind of thing that we do. We come, we teach, we leave. So at the very least, if you engage us for that, that's a wonderful way to work with us. We then bring our bioanalytical tools and deep insights in our bioinformatics pipelines to bear so that you can get earlier warning. I'll talk a little bit about one or two trophies that we have from the early warning system for COVID. So if we go a little bit more detailed into our toolbox, how many of the people in the audience are familiar with the term PCR? Yes, right? COVID made that a household name. People didn't know what PCR was before COVID. They looked at me and rolled their eyes and fell asleep. Now everybody knows what PCR and antigen tests are. So we work with PCR samples. We don't actually work in the clinical symptomatic surveillance system. We work in asymptomatic environments. So we pull wastewater from buildings. We collect wastewater from airplanes. We collect them from airplanes in Rwanda at the moment. We also collect nasal swabs from individuals that are departing airplanes. They voluntarily swab, and we work with the local labs to sequence that. We do this in congregate settings, whether it's school communities, nursing homes, community centers. But we don't collect personal identifiable information because we're not in the business of diagnostic symptomatic surveillance. We're in the business of population health. So individuals can submit, they might tell us the flight they're coming from. That's very helpful for us in our detection platforms. And so that's unique, and that's the first mile problem. We then combine it with those advanced genomic sequencing tools I told you about. And then we work on brand new cutting edge technologies, things like CRISPR-Cas that you heard about today, that's cutting gene sequences. And we work with academic institutions in the US and then partner with laboratories across the globe to bring those technologies forward. When I talked about metadata, that weird word metadata, what I'm talking about is all the other information that's available to think through how infectious disease moves. We don't only work with infectious disease, we also look at how genetically modified organisms move through the environment. And we look at that both from issues of monitoring food that's coming into the country, but also for biological threats. So if somebody is genetically engineering something to impact the population in a nefarious way, we have tools that can actually look at sequencing data and let you know if something is in your environment and in your populations that has never been seen before, possibly shouldn't be there. What we do is we model that with advanced analytics. So like I was saying before, we look at everything. So we look at zoonotic transfer. We're looking at wildlife interactions with humans. We're looking at mobility networks. So humans are great vectors for moving diseases around. So we look at how airplane flight paths work. We look at ports of entry. We look at in the US, we look at how highways are moving organisms around. We've even washed down trucks that carry around livestock in order to see what's circulating with animal populations. And then this is where we really work closely with the local community. So I could tell you airports are really important, but that might not actually be the place in Nigeria where you're seeing major modes of transmission. And I humbly am here. I have no idea what your best nodes are. We learn from you, and then we help set up the infrastructure. So we're in airports in the US, and we're in airports globally. But hospitals and nursing homes, church communities could be a great place to be doing surveillance if people are coming together. We do work on high BSL labs as well. So you have phenomenal BSL laboratory facilities here, 3, and I'm hearing 4. And so we can help with building level surveillance to make sure that the organisms are staying where they're supposed to be, and we can look out in the community and make sure they're not being spread. This is a great way for the forensic departments to track and make sure that nobody's in the laboratory moving things around that they shouldn't be. So I told you that I would end on the use cases. So for those of you that are not technology geeks like myself, I think nerd was the word I heard today. For those of you that are not technology nerds, I want to kind of zoom back from the toolbox and talk about all the different ways we're bringing this technology to the world in order to help prevent the next pandemic. I'm personally invested in this. I have 2 children. I don't want to live to 200 years old because I'd like my grandchildren to have a shot if I'm so lucky to have them. But I'm a former academic. I taught over 17,000 students at the University of Pennsylvania. And I was inspired by the hopeful nature of the students, but also feel a daily urgency. If we don't act now, then when? It'll be too late. So as a company, we rise to that challenge every day, and every day we move the needle. So one of the programs that we work with is a traveler genomic program with the CDC. This is a graph here that shows all of the different variants that we've detected through that program by sampling aircraft wastewater and volunteers submitting nasal swabs. We detected Omicron, the first in the US, 45 days before it presented in any hospital setting. We were able to give that back to the CDC and our state public health departments. They shipped rapid antigen testing to school communities and community centers so that they wouldn't overburden their ER rooms. They were able to isolate people, get them out of the community, and help dampen the spread of Omicron. We just detected BA.286, second in the world. We also are detecting variants that are emerging right now that I'm not at liberty to talk about, but that are cycling up to the federal agencies who will share with the global. So it's a really impactful program. And my colleague Chris Perez already talked about these fun stats here. But this is a map of where we are in the world. If it's a dark purple country, it means that we're actively setting up programs in those spaces. So I'd love to see Nigeria on there by the next conference. And if it's a purple area, it's areas that we're getting information from through these programs across the world. I'll skip our installations except to say that we do work on national biosecurity. So we do work with military groups as well as national safety groups in order to monitor harmful biology. I spoke for a minute about schools and congregate settings, but one of the places that I'm really excited about is we're now working in the livestock area. And so we're looking at antimicrobial resistance. We're looking at it at the farm and in the abattoirs. We're looking at all of the diseases that are commonly carried with livestock that can have zoonotic spillover to humans. If we could get to that point in the surveillance system and have really good insights, we could probably prevent many of the diseases that impact humans globally. So thank you. I hope to see all of you at lunch, and I appreciate the time today.
Thank you, Karen. Make sure you're here next year because your presentation is actually enlightening. We'd like you to be here next year. If you have any problem with visa, please see Dr. Dotun. He will make sure that you are giving that grant express. It's impressive because I know that the presentation was quite very insightful. We didn't know all of that. You said there was a sample. How did you put a sample? You test and then 66 diseases or something in just one. We have to be watching you people. I hope you didn't have any involvement with the lab in China. Because, okay, you didn't. Okay, all right. Because here we are saying that there's a prediction that between, and I saw that slide, between 10 to 23 years, low risk. 15% of 23, we have about 10 years. 53 or something, we have 25 years and all that. So we know then in the 18th or 19th century, there was a pandemic, and now we had the COVID. And obviously, it looks like it's part of the world system, so we should all get ready for that's kind of scary, all right? But I'm glad that we have companies like yours that are thinking for ahead, forward-thinking companies, and of course, Get Consortium is also there to make sure that we're working collaboratively. Next year, sir, I imagine, sir, that we are going to make this conference very expanded. Concentric Genco must be a part of it. I think they are doing so much. What is PCR again? Is it principal corp rate? Okay, okay. You guys know that better. All right. Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen. Just on a lighter note, but then I'm going to be inviting my last speaker before we go on to lunch, and then I'll let her to know that she's the one standing between us and lunch. She is a Nigerian environmentalist, climate justice advocate, lawyer, gender and social inclusive expert, and human rights activist. She is the founder and executive director for the non-governmental sustainability organization called Center for 21st Century Issues, and the head of the law firm Titi Akosa and Company Nigeria. She led research in collaboration with International Alliance of Indigenous and Tribal Peoples of Tropical Forest, Henry Bowl Foundation, and other local organizations to conduct research on gender and climate change in order to provide empirical evidence on mainstreaming gender in climate change initiatives here in Nigeria. And she's going to be speaking on the topic, funding opportunities for building climate resilience health system for Lagos State in particular. Ladies and gentlemen, please can we put our hands together for Ms. Titi Akosa. And I want to say a big thank you for your referrals and recommendation as well.
I'm serious. Thank you very much. I find it very strange at times when I hear my CV. Please you have to change that CV. I don't know where you get that. Maybe old one. Anyway, can I go to the next slide? I'm not going to take your time because I know everybody is hungry, but we are going to discuss a few issues around financing. Because over the years, working around climate change, have thrown me into the deep waters of climate finance, where currently I sit on the Green Climate Fund board as one of the CSO's rep for Africa. So I've seen a lot of proposals being brought for climate change. And as I speak today, we don't have much around climate change and health. And it's very, very important that we have a lot of projects coming in on climate change and health. And I don't know why people are running away from bringing proposals. Perhaps maybe because most of the organizations that have been accredited to access funding through the Green Climate Fund, maybe because their accreditation modality will not help them actually to bring forward a project proposals on health. So, and even as I speak, World Health Organization is not accredited to the Green Climate Fund, and that's a huge gap for us. So it now means that the field is open anyway for any health organization to seek accreditation, and you can be sure that anything you bring on health, you will get the funding. So as we go, I think I just want to make this statement as a beginning. That climate change is the biggest threat to health in the 21st century, and our very survival is at stake. That's said by somebody. You see the name there. World Health Organization said this, and it's very, very important. And such as resilient health systems that can ensure adaptation to the growing burdens of disease and impacts of extreme weather and heat that are killing us daily. Anyway, that is what we are currently dealing with here right now around the world. And I'll tell you that Lagos State is also part of this challenge. We know that Lagos State is a low-lying coastal city. It faces challenges on environmental health such as climate change, low air quality. As we speak now, low quality sensors, I won't say low quality sensors, I say low fee. Maybe because it's not very, very expensive now. We are being placed in different aspects of Lagos to monitor the air quality, to understand what is really happening, so that we can use those data actually to direct our health systems and to see what is in the air and what is actually affecting the health of our populace in Lagos State. So this is happening. Health infrastructure also have been affected by climate change. If you look at the different kinds of big flooding that we have in Lagos State, at times you may not be able to enter into most of our primary care center, those ones that are really, really in the interior, and those ones that have problems with infrastructure. But thank God for our Commissioner for Health. One of the first things he started doing was to actually revamp our primary care centers and our general hospitals and to make them to be climate compliant. So right now we have what I call greenfield and bluefield designs for our general hospitals and our primary care centers. So it has been approved, and very soon they will start building them according to that design that Lagos State has approved. So we also have disruption to medical services in the wake of climate-induced floods and risk of injuries and death to human population as a result of storms and flooding. A lot of you who are in Lagos will know, especially around Lekki. I don't just want to bring some of these pictures. I don't think it's important to bring those kind of pictures. But maybe next time we will give you some data around some of these primary care centers and or some of our general hospitals that have been affected. I know the Lekki General Hospital is being affected by water, so the commissioner had to go and check that general hospital. Right now, they are building another one very close to that one, and the land is so good and very nice. And I think we have done the breaking. I can't remember right now, but I know that they are relocating that general hospital because the kind of water that enters into it and that is destroying that infrastructure is so massive. So the health sector accounts for around 4.6% of global emissions. And I think it's very important we look at it. As much as different sectors also have are emitting carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases that is causing climate change, the health sector too is implicated in this, though it may be small, but then the global for the whole of health sector is 4.6% of global emission, and you can tell me that is very, very remarkable. So I have decided to bring this graphics here. It's from World Bank. Staggering gaps in health-related climate financing. See, before we go to health-related climate financing, we must actually look at health sector itself. We have a huge financing gap in the whole of health sector itself. If you look at what the World Bank put here, insufficient, inequitable. So there's inequity also when we're talking about gaps in financing. So it means that if you don't have enough money to actually address some of these important issues within the health systems, then it can also foster inequality in terms of services you give to the people, because it means that people who have money may be able to access, those who don't have money cannot access. And we know that the marginalized, the poor, will have challenges in that area. It means that people will have to pay out of pocket for their health services. And this is not too good enough, especially in the times we are right now in Nigeria, when fuel subsidy have been removed. And you know what that means for a whole lot of our massive population. So if we now go down to climate finance targets, the health sector are nearly no global health finance targets climate adaptation. If you look at health systems, it is in between adaptation and mitigation of climate change. So when we are adapting, at times we adapt our infrastructure, we adapt our systems also to align to actually be able to withstand the shocks of climate impacts. And at times it could be mitigation. It could be the kind of energy mix that we use in our hospitals. And it could be, of course, right now, as we speak, most of what we use in our hospitals are fossil fuels. And I see a lot of advocates saying we need to face down fossil fuel. I don't know how we are going to do it in Nigeria, but it's an economic issue that we need to really decide on how to go about it. But I know that, yes, we may face down fossil fuel, but then they will give us some moratorium to divest from fossil fuel. But then our health system needs to keep running, or else people will die. So what kind of energy mix do we have there? So the issue of mitigation is also implicated. So less than 5% of total global adaptation spending and less than 1% of multilateral climate adaptation finance target health. You see, nobody is really targeting health in climate finance, and that is really terrible. And it's something that we really need to do. And in 2018, only 3% of international donor funding for health was allocated to climate change projects. So it means that funding for climate-related health issues is very poor. From health itself generally, also to health and climate-related issues, the funding is poor all around. So we go to the next. So Lagos State. So how much are we putting in our health sector? This is 2020. And I think the commissioner came in 2019. They had 21 billion. And when we came in 2020, this is what they had. Yeah, this is the plan. But by the time we got to 2021, things have changed. It's an under-resourced health system. Budgetary allocation to health are inadequate, either in Nigeria or in Lagos. I've only decided to bring the data for Lagos State because we are talking about Lagos State here. So Lagos State allocated some billions in its 2022 budget to the health sector, representing 8.87%. I think that's a dip from what we had the other time. And in 2023 budget, we have also gone back to 7.2%. So It means that all around, the spending for health, this is real health, not even thinking around health and climate change. Of course, there is no health and climate change line item in the budget of Lagos State, and that's very poor. And I think Prof has tried because for us to get to this stage, what we were asking for was 15%. That is the Abuja Declaration standard. Yet, we went up and they promised that over the years things will change. But then rather than it changing, it keeps coming down. But then, we still don't have any line item in our budget that really relates to climate change and health. So it's something we really need to look at. It now means that it's like, it seems, because I will tell you it's not true, because I know HC is always very particular about climate change and health in Lagos State. And that's why, as I speak today, he has inaugurated 4 consultants to actually help Lagos State to look at the issue of health and climate change, and also to help Lagos State to mobilize climate finance to the Lagos State health sector. And the 4, I think one of them is here, Dr. is here, myself is one of them, and we have another, one of our professors is going to speak after I speak. Professor Jimmy is also part of it, another and another lecturer from Lagos State University. 4 of us, we are working every day right now to see how we mobilize finance. And one good thing that is now happening is that COP itself, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, is now recognizing health. And for the first time, health is going to be on the agenda in Dubai. And in the next 1 week, everybody will be flying to COP 28. And for the first time, we are going to have a high-level segment on climate change and health. World Health Organization is going to be there. All the important world health organizations are going to be there. Last year, they had a pavilion. But for me, I always say a pavilion does not translate to policy statements. It doesn't. And it does not translate to you negotiating, putting issues within the negotiations of the UNFCCC. So, but right now, in COP28, we are going to have that. People are going to talk, and we are going to have developed nations who are responsible for climate change now commit funding to climate change and health. So we are looking forward to it in COP. And on 3rd of December, that's the day they are going to have that high-level segment, and it happens to be the first Climate and Health Day in COP. They've never celebrated Climate and Health Day in COP before, but this Dubai COP, they are going to do that. And it's going to be a big high-level meeting where governments will come and make commitments. And you know, when they make commitments, it will go to climate finance institutions, it will go to the GCF, it will go to adaptation funds, it will go to all those funds, so that you can go and assess. And you know, access modalities can really become rocket science if you are not prepared for it. And thank God in Lagos State, we are already preparing for that. Now, so that's a policy moment for us that we have to really take care. So, what are other opportunities? I've decided to just put a potpourri of ideas here because it's by no means exhaustive. So we are going to look at it. We have new financing sources for climate and health through climate finance institutions, multilateral development banks, and development partners. And thank God also AFDB, who does not fund anything on health, have started to fund health. And it is really because of the pandemic, 2020 COVID pandemic. Now, they are pulling resources into health, and that's good for us. And we can look at AFDB as our own bank and see whether we can get some financing from them. And I'm sure they are also going to take the steps and follow other multilateral development banks also to look at climate finance and health. So, second, private sector investment in climate and health through green bonds. Nigeria has issued some sovereign green bonds, and they made some important investment returns from energy projects. Though there are some of the projects that failed, but the energy projects actually work. A lot of you who are conversant with energizing education project by which they use solar and renewable energies for all our universities in Nigeria. So they're still making a whole lot of returns on that investment. And it's something we can think around our hospitals. Can we energize our hospital that way with renewables? But yet, I know some of our cold chains in Lagos State are using renewable energy, but the percentage of that mix is still not very clear. So, in private sectors, we could develop some special purpose vehicles also. But each time I talk about special purpose vehicle, I always talk about special purpose vehicle that will be registered here, not in any offshore country. Because what we have seen in the Green Climate Fund is that when they want to start a special purpose vehicle, most of them are registered in Luxembourg, and they want to channel the money to Africa. It beats my imagination. Well, of course, the private sector said that they want to invest in a stable economy, in a place where they ensure that, of course, there will not be disruption to their businesses, and they will have returns on their investment. So it's something we can think around also. We can do a lot of special purpose vehicle around early warning and looking at what they call climate information services. These are products that people can help us if we have good meteorological and hydrometeorological what they call machines that we need to get the right data, do the analysis, and then prioritize different sectors, because it's not enough for you to have this data, but it's enough to you to analyze it in such a way that people can use it for their businesses. For instance, if people know that in the next 6 months there's going to be heavy rains, people will prepare ahead. They will tell you what you need to do to prepare ahead to be able to adapt. They will tell you how this will help your businesses and how your businesses will not be affected by floods. I'm sure a lot of you will be happy to get those kinds of information, even buy those kinds of information, and then be able to plow it into your businesses so that you will not face those kinds of destructions that happen after flooding. And a lot of you will remember that in COP, this next COP, we are going to also discuss loss and damages. And then it's such a very important COP for us, because we are going to be discussing climate finance and health, and we are going to be discussing loss and damage finance. I said they are going to finalize it. So by the time we link those two together, there's enough for us to actually tap into this kind of finance that we need to address climate and health issues in Lagos State. So we focus on air quality. Just like I told you, there's a project on air quality going on in Lagos State. And I think they have a huge data coming out. But we keep telling them it's not enough for us to have this data. At times when I go to the Green Climate Fund in Korea, and I always see this big television on the streets, and they tell me what the air quality is going to be. Early in the morning, you will know where there's going to be fog. They will tell you whether it's going to be raining, it's going to rain, and things like that. And by the time they put all this information right there on the board, you are looking at it as like a television. You just see some adverts pop up. So it means that you're working with the private sector. Somebody is paying for it. Somebody is advertising and getting some value. And that's the way private sector can come and crowd it into this. So it's very, very important. We have some fund like Clean Air Fund, Welcome Trust, UNEP, and all of them are also really written to actually address the issue of air quality in Africa. Then focus on early warning and climate information advisory services to address climate and health risk. And I think this will not be complete without disease surveillance also, because they all go hand in hand. These are services that are very, very important for us. We need to know the spatial distribution of diseases, especially during flooding and things like that. And we need to invest. If we don't invest in it, then we'll still continue to have a weak health systems that will not work for our people. And it's very, very important that our health systems work for the people. Then we go financing to boost disease surveillance system. Okay, it's there. Human resource for health on climate change. Now we have climate doctors. Maybe you don't know. People have been trained to be climate doctors to actually diagnose whether you have been affected by climate change. And we also understand the issue of mental health cases from some of these impacts that come on people. So these are issues that we really need to invest in. And then we have investment in nature-based health solutions. This is something a lot of people are not discussing. We know that if people are sick, and really, really very sick, they will go to the native doctors. And we pretend as if those native doctors are not happening to us. people go there every day. And if you really think deeply, they have different kinds of herbs, and some of them are going into extinction due to climate change. How do we resuscitate that? How do we bring nature into our healing system? And we know we have a lot of traditional medicine practitioners. Lagos State has a board for traditional medicine. They train them, and they are trying to standardize them. And I think the Honorable Commissioner is so passionate about traditional medicine, and is doing a lot to standardize the traditional medicine in Lagos State. So we really need them. So aligning climate and health investments to build climate resilient health system will save lives now and the coming decades in the face of the unfolding planetary emergency. That's just my conclusion. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. This is impressive and insightful as well as very enlightening. Thank you very much, Ms. Titi Akosa. So I hope next year we will still have the climate, finance, and health section at the conference, because we need this conversation to be far more expanded. We need to have that. As a matter of fact, I've gained so much. She has been a guest of mine on NTA Business Matters. I guess we're going to have to repeat this conversation. It's quite important. And I'm glad that the Commissioner for Health, I think he stepped out, he has been here. He's always here, sacrificed the time he has to do other things to make sure that his presence is felt. And it's a wonderful thing. We want to say a big thank you to him. It's such a wonderful, wonderful thing. And then the two young ladies stepping out right now. Please, can you put your hands together for them? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. I'm not going to say anything further than that, but it's a great thing to say them. I'm most inspired, and I'm thank them for all of their support. It's quite impressive. And this conference, I wish we could have extended it for 3 days. There's so much to learn, and I believe that Professor Obayori is actually capturing a lot of this high points, so that by during the communique aspect, we will. And then the presentations, will they be available on the site or through the journals, as the case might be? And please remember, there is an hashtag GetConference2023. So when you take your pictures, make sure you use that hashtag. It helps us to be able to drive our awareness campaign as well. Please, I want to quickly ask that make sure you hold your phones, your laptops, your tabs, your handbags. I'm going to keep announcing that. It's very important. If you don't have this tally number, please, can you indicate by raising up your hand? You don't have a tag? Okay. 1, 2. If you don't have this tag, no lunch for you. So better answer now, because you are looking. And Professor Owolabi has advised us, when you go for that lunch, there's a session that you have a lot of leaves. You people should eat leaves. Oh, we are talking now. Immunity has to be boosted. Oh. And that yesterday, all of that leaf was almost left. I had to finish it. Today, I want to be benevolent and make sure we all share it. Please, eat leaf according to the Yorubas. All right? So at this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to ask our people up here front. Lunch is served, and we will be using our tag. So as you get there, you just give them, then you go have what you want to eat. The Professor Jimmy Adegoke, I'm not too sure whether he's here present, but whether he's going to be joining us virtually. So after lunch is for 30 minutes. We have our last session, and then we have messages from our conference sponsors and partners. And finally, with the presentation of the conference communique, we will be bringing the 9th edition of the African Conference on World Health and Biosecurity to an end. Please be mindful of your personal items, your phone, your laptops, your tabs, and your handbags. Please, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important. Thank you very much.